Ladies and gentlemen, we have a real treat for you today on the HammondCast show on KYOU Radio. I'm coming to you from Emeryville, California, with our guest today, John Nady, who is the president / CEO of Nady Company and Nady Systems. That's right, Nady Systems. And John is a musician and also the developer of many wireless microphone systems, a real pioneer in the field. How you doing today, John?
Oh, pretty good. How are you?
Great. Feeling great. It's really great to be back here. This is my old hometown, and it's really great. I've been hearing about you and your products for a long time. So your company became a company as Nady in 1976. Is that right?
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's our 32nd year.
Wow, that's a nice, good long run. Well, a lot of people are using your products, and you're diversifying quite a bit now too. Besides for music applications, I see that you've got some interesting uses for your wireless microphone technology. Like a lot of times you see these guys going down the highway riding two people on a motorcycle, and you wonder how did they communicate on a loud outside motorcycle, and they're using your wireless system to talk between their
well,
helmets.
That's not
sometimes.
a wireless mic system. That's a wireless communicator. But yeah, we got into that in the early '80s with motorcycle communication gear and intercoms also.
Wow.
Which kind of arose out of my interest in. I rode motorcycles all my life, and so we thought some of the technology we were doing with wireless microphones. And at that time we were also producing overseas at a low cost and so on, and so we thought it would segue into some motorcycle products. So we actually are known in the motorcycle accessory field with our intercoms and so on.
And of course a lot of guitar players now, they are connected to their amplifiers wirelessly, you know. So for people who don't understand how that works, it's always been interesting to me because I'm a little bit of a hack broadcaster. You know, I've always been involved in CB radios and some of the ham stuff. And there's so many different frequencies out there, you know. So the frequency that you broadcast on to avoid interference from outside things, what kind of a range are you broadcasting in when you have something like a guitar or microphone going back to the amplifier? Whereabouts are you?
Well, we have several different products. That's actually been changing over the years. When we first got on the market in '76, the only frequencies that were legally allowed were citizens band, which and so there were some rudimentary wireless microphones that didn't work very well, but they used them in certain applications. And you'd occasionally have citizens band radio, which is like at 39 megahertz in that area. Like you saw that in Spinal Tap, you know, where the guys cutting in. That was kind of the joke.
Breaker 19,
that, right? And our original systems were at 88 to 108, which was, you know, you tuned it in between FM stations. That was the only other place they allowed wireless microphones. Subsequently, they opened up the late 70s, early 80s. They opened up the VHF band, which is unused TV channels 7 through 13, between like 174 and 216 megahertz, and that's still in use today. Most locations have like a channel 7, 9, 11, and then an alternate location nearby would be 8 and 10, but you wouldn't have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 all in one location.
Right.
And so there's going to be open channels. Of course, that makes, if you move around, that makes it, you have to pick frequencies that are right in between the bands and things like that. Work that out. But all during the '80s, the VHF bands were the happening band, and then in the early '90s, they opened up the other TV channels. You know, all the UHF channels, which goes between around 490 megahertz to about 800 megahertz, 806 megahertz, and there were some advantages to operating up there because there were much wider bands available, but at the same time, there were trade-offs. The units were a little bit noisier up at higher frequencies due to the technology involved. They used battery power more and so on. And now lately, they've sold off 700 to 800 megahertz. They auctioned it off for other uses, broadband uses, internet uses, and things like that. So now there's going to be a shift over to below 700 megahertz, and we're involved in that also. And we'll see how it sorts out. But if I had my druthers, all things being equal, I'd rather still use a VHF system because it propagates better, uses less battery life, and
so the range is pretty. What is the range on something like that? How far away?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, wireless over the years, human nature being what it is, the first thing people do when they go into a store, almost always, to test the wireless, they walk to see how far away they can get. You know, and it's a gee whiz factor, like, oh wow, I'm 150 feet away, 200 feet away, and so on. But and the range can vary, like in an open hall or something like that, to hundreds of feet. For years, we outfitted the Stones, starting in 1981, on their tour where they had the wings going way out in the audience, and that was the first time somebody had a whole show based on wireless. We worked with the Stones on that.
Wow, great.
And they had like 12 channels of our wireless, which was a lot in those days, 1981. And, you know, they'd have Mick Jagger out on one wing, and then Keith on the other wing, and they'd be literally hundreds of feet apart. And of course they had monitors right there so they could stay in time. One thing people don't realize when they talk about distance is that in most cases, most people don't go more than 30, 40 feet away. And it's not just because they're limited in terms of the stage they're playing at in a club or whatever, but you also get a time delay. And at 100 feet, you get a tenth of a second. So roughly 1,000 feet a second. So at a tenth of a second is a long time when you're playing fast music.
Right.
And so when you're playing at that distance, like some of these blues cats like Buddy Guy and Albert Collins used to walk out in the audience and stuff, and walk outside the club like I myself did with my band in the 70s. You have to actually play ahead of the band to stay in time with them. So you feel like you're leaning forward while you're playing. It's kind of an odd sensation. So most people you know, overemphasize the range thing, but the important thing is that you have solid range in the 30, 40, 50 feet, and no dropouts and things like that. That's, in most applications, that's what you use.
So the Rolling Stones, that must have been interesting working with them directly on a new system like that.
Well, we first caught up with them in '78. In fact, there's a picture in the lobby showing.
I saw it look around
that's
1980-ish.
That's the '78 tour. They went out for 3 years.
Right.
And they caught up with us and said they want to base their whole '81 tour on the ability to be wireless and go far out on stages and everything else. And so they were really wanted to make sure it was all going to work for them, because everything, even the backup singer sang into wireless mics.
Wow.
They had like 12 channels going, like, which was a lot in those days for, you know, a particular application. And Mick actually wanted me to run the system for him. So, and he wanted me to, and he said I could bring my girlfriend at the time, which was subsequently my wife, you know, with me and go on a year tour with them.
Oh,
and I
nice.
said, no, I got to run a company. I said, if you'd asked me 10 years ago,
yeah,
I would have done it. But I'll go with you the first couple of stops. So we went out to Boulder, Colorado, and went to that gig. And then the next one was at the Candlestick Park in San Francisco. And then, you know, he was confident. I mean, they didn't really need me because the systems ran themselves. But
that must have been a lot of fun, though.
Yeah, but it was fun. I got to talk to Jerry Hall a lot backstage and watch Keith do his illicit stuff behind the amp.
Too much. So some of the other artists who use your products, I heard you mention John Bon Jovi.
Oh yeah, well you know during the '80s, the so-called Hair Nation period, when all the long-haired hard rock, melodic hard rock bands were out, we had a monopoly. I mean, I remember in '86. They listed in Billboard the top 100 touring acts of the year, and 85 of them used our wireless.
Wow.
If you see any compilations of videos from the 80s of all those bands, all the LA hair bands and all that stuff, you always see them using a wireless microphone with a little red and green dot on the bottom.
Right.
And that was our signature mic at the time. Red was for off and green was for on.
Right.
You'd have to be able to read to know which way to turn it off and on. And that appears in almost all the videos and photos from that period. And it wasn't until the early 90s that competition from the likes of Shure, Audio-Technica, and Sennheiser and all these people started coming in.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that must have been a lot of fun working with artists like that. And I see that you also have some in-ear monitor products, and also do you have some hearing aid type products as well?
No, not hearing aid. We did in-ear monitors actually in 78, 79, and we outfitted a couple of acts. It was wireless in-ear monitors.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was telling you earlier before we started this, I was talking to Stevie Wonder. He was one of the guys who used it because he kind of was using it as a guide because he didn't like to be let out on stage. He liked to just walk right to his thing and sit down. And
I see, yeah.
So they would actually also use the in-ear monitor as well as being a monitor. It would also tell him, okay, turn left now, turn right.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
And so there were a number of people, but it was kind of ahead of its time, and people were still getting used to the idea of wireless microphones and wireless guitars. So we did it for about a year and a half or so, and then the payoff for the terms of sales we were making on the in-ear wireless in-ear monitors were not paying off. So we waited till the market started up again in the late '80s, and then have been in it since then.
Well, a lot of guys are using those now, and unfortunately, a lot of us are experiencing hearing loss after being exposed to so much sound pressure over the years. So
yeah, I got a little tinnitus in my right ear from my drummer's cymbals. I always stood on that side.
Right,
cymbals right there.
Comes with the territory for sure. So we discovered that we have quite a few friends in common, and we even used to play at an old venue that was is still near and dear to my heart, and that was the Long Branch Saloon at San Pablo and Dwight Way.
Long Branch, the Keystone, Berkeley,
and that's right. You were a
New Orleans house, and
right, the New Orleans house. I played there. Mandrakes,
it was a happening scene compared to now. I mean,
yeah, definitely. So you have been a venue owner too, and you've had quite a few different things going on in music besides being a technology audio guy. You've been involved actually in making music and presenting music as well.
Well, I had a band all these years. We like to think of ourselves as the world's first wireless band. We were wireless from about 1970 on, before anybody knew it.
Wow.
I remember especially when we used to play like Treasure Island in San Francisco Bay, the Navy gigs.
Oh yeah.
And I remember one time I was running around in the audience, which was completely unheard of, and nobody knew what I was doing. And these drunken sailors would come up and start whacking on my strings, thinking I was faking it.
Wow.
I just let go of the neck and let them do it, and they go whang whang whang.
Wow.
I got a kick out of that, and so we had quite a bit of fun with that before anybody ever even understood what was going on. I mean, the touring bands didn't really start doing it till the late '70s.
That's wild, John. Well, you had some fantastic ideas, and you brought them forth into products that are in everyday use all around the world. So I got to hand it to you, and I really want to thank you for your time being on our show. And we're on a station that comes from San Francisco called KYOU. We're the official broadcast station of the Oakland A's baseball team, but we come on at hours when there's no baseball game going on. So thanks a lot for joining us. And before we get out of here, what have you got to say to our listeners on KYOU?
Well, I don't want to be cliched, but like the old keep rockin', but keep rockin' with Nady products.